The Pretoria High Court has halted the burial of Zambia's former president Edgar Lungu in South Africa. The Zambian Attorney General approaching the court to halt Lungu's burial through an interim interdict on Wednesday. The court's challenge was the latest move in a feud between the Zambian government and Lungu's family over his burial. The family wanted a private ceremony in South Africa rather than a full state funeral at home, where Lungu had a long-standing feud with his successor, President Hakainde Hichilema. The ruling comes as some family members attended a funeral service at the Cathedral of Christ the King in Hillbrow, Johannesburg today. Lungu died earlier this month at a medical center in Pretoria, where he had been receiving specialized treatment. And this is what the family had to say, especially after that court ruling.
The family has been consistent. He mattered to the family when he was president. He matters to the family now. And taking him back home, it so appears, will not give him a dignified burial. And the family only wants to give him a dignified burial, not one that's shrouded in mockery, that's shrouded in PR, that's shrouded in giving the international community a perception that he was properly treated, when in fact not. Decency requires that the government should come across and say, we are sorry we never treated him well. We are sorry we did wrong to him. Now that he's dead, how can we make amends? No one spoke for Edgar Lungu when he was alive. And now people want to pretend to speak for him when they were never there for him in his lifetime. And this time around, perhaps President Edgar Lungu has refused to go down to the soil without the truth being told. And now onwards, until his burial, the truth of Edgar Lungu shall be told, and we shall tell it in a very systematic way. In court, we shall tell the full story of Edgar Lungu, how he came into South Africa as a private citizen, how that the protocols that he was entitled to, or the entitlements of being given, being accorded to the embassy to treat him in this country, our Zambian embassy, how that he never got anything from them, how that he came on a commercial flight, flying economy, got to this place, walked through security clearance, walked through immigration like a normal person, waited for an Uber outside the airport. Is that the life of a former president? Certainly not. And this should not be, his death should not be used as a PR stunt by the government of the Republic of Zambia. That story we shall tell in court, and evidence shall be brought before the court that will exonerate President Edgar Lungu and his family.
All right, let's take this discussion further now. We speak to SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena, SABC News Senior Reporter Canny Mapanga, and of course another Senior Reporter, Chriselda, who are joining us on the story. Chriselda, you've had quite the eventful day, you and Sophie, out there tracking developments on the story while Canny was in court. A very upset family, speaking about what the late former president would have been subjected to, despite what we hear from the Zambian government.
Well, clearly, Bongiwe, it has been the family's wishes that the former president of Zambia, Edgar Lungu, not be repatriated to Zambia. In actual fact, from the clip that you just heard from the family spokesperson, they're asking questions about why he should now all of a sudden be treated a particular way when they say he was not treated right when he was alive. So the outcome of the court case that my colleague Canny Mapanga was covering was certainly a blow to them. They would have hoped to continue with the funeral service and the burial, a private burial that was scheduled for today, but of course that did not go their way. But they do say now, ventilating this in court at a later stage would give them an opportunity to raise more issues about what they say is the manner in which the late former president was treated. And
I suppose they're looking for a moment to then be able to air the grievances that we even heard a snippet of today. Canny, let's speak about the reasons that the court reached this particular conclusion, because while the developments were taking place in Johannesburg earlier, there was also a monitoring of what was taking place in the courtroom.
Indeed, Bongiwe, it's important to note that the outcome you saw today following the interim interdict application was by agreement by both parties. That means that instructions were given for both parties to give undertakings and make whatever concessions they needed to make to meet each other in the middle and find some form of an agreement, which was made into a draft order that later became the order of the courts. They had the opportunity to argue the matter should they choose to do so. Parties chose to go into this agreement with one another, pending the main adjudication of the matter, which really is the heart of the issue, where you're going to delve into the substantive issues being raised by the Zambian government, which is that this is a public interest matter and it involves the Republic of Zambia and the best interests of the Zambian nation. They've brought this application in terms of Article 177 of Zambia's constitution, which empowers the Attorney General to always act in the best interests of the Republic of Zambia. And it is their contention that it is not the best interest of the Republic of Zambia and the Zambian nation for its former head of state to be laid to rest in South Africa and not in his homeland. Now, there is an opportunity in this over a month window for parties to find some form of a resolution outside of the court. Failure to do so means that you'll have a situation where the former head of state will be laying in that morgue for over a month as they await that main court hearing on the 4th of August for them to finally adjudicate this matter. And
I'm going to get to that in just a moment. And the second part, which takes us back in time, Sophie, around the late former President Kenneth Kaunda. But I want to stay with what we're seeing unfold here. You look at former President Edgar Lungu and his successor. We saw tensions play out in life. Now, even beyond the grave, tensions are playing out?
Well, I think the Zambians in the region. Zambia is quite an important country that led and supported many countries to be free. And they have been a good example of Africa in terms of many issues, with their founding father, Kenneth Kaunda, leading the way in an exemplary manner. Now, this problem of a former leader and a sitting president fighting, it's not new. The founding father, that country, arrested its own founding father, KK, you'd recall. And other leaders in the region had to intervene. He even had to come to South Africa. Then the South African government under Begi gave him a house to write his book and tried to support him emotionally. Some of the children were accommodated in Namibia. You come to Chiluba, the same person who persecuted KK, he also went through troubles. Now, you had the opposition leader, Hakainde Hichilema, being arrested most of the time when he was competing with Edgar Lungu. Today, you have Hakainde Hichilema, who is now the president, who's accused of also violating the rights of the former president. The only difference is that they haven't arrested the former sitting president, but the wife of the late former President Lungu is facing charges as we speak. She has to attend some court proceedings in Zambia. Therefore, this problem of tension in the leadership post and during your tenure becomes an issue, and it's something that I think Zambia, as a role model in the region, will have to deal with. I remember asking the former South African President Jacob Zuma in Zimbabwe when he went there during the official funeral of the former president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, that why on the continent there's always tension between a sitting president and a former president. So I think that whole problem is continuing. In Zimbabwe, the government under Mnangagwa agreed finally to what the family wanted. But even there was a long argument back and forth that Mugabe is the one who built the Heroes Acre. He has buried many people there. He must also go there. While the family was saying, no, he must go to his farm. That's what he said. So I think it is a problem. In South Africa, it's quite different. The Madiba made it clear to everybody that he wants to be buried in Qunu. The South African government, even before Madiba passed on the M plan, they planned around burying Madiba in Qunu according to his wish. So I think other countries can learn from South Africa, that much as a person is a former head of state or a head of state, you also have to respect what the family is saying. So I think at this moment, you need a country like South Africa that has done it before to ensure that there's no tension, to assist countries such as Zimbabwe, the chair of SADC, and of course other former heads of state in the region like your Jakaya Kikwete, because when KK had problems in his country post his tenure, it was a country such as Tanzania, Mwalimu Nyerere, who intervened.
Chriselda, when one thinks about that moment when Canny is in court, the story is breaking, Sophie is speaking, and then the family post that, post the mass, gets to learn about what had happened. Let's speak about the moment, how the news was broken and how was their reaction.
Given that we were at the church service that was that happened after the announcement or the ruling that was made at the High Court in Pretoria, the family had been in court and had made their way to the service just shortly after that announcement had been made. And when they arrived, they were quite, you could see that they were devastated. That was not the outcome that they were hoping for. And there'd been also quite a number of mourners, Zambians here in South Africa. There were also a number of MPs, members of parliament, that flew from Zambia to South Africa, hoping to attend this final send-off. That did not happen. So, you know, we'd been watching the proceedings in court just outside the church on the SABC Plus app. And, you know, we had a lot of people gathered there. They wanted to know what was happening. You could sense the tension. You could sense how they were hoping that the send-off would take place. But very much what we saw was, you know, obviously today it was very one-sided in terms of the political feud and what had taken place in Zambia, given the fact that you had most people there from the Patriotic Front. And not much being said about, you know, what Zambia's current sitting president had to say post that, because a number of reports that we'd seen, including videos, I think there's one where President Hichilema had been addressing civil society, and he basically blamed the Lungu family to say that when he heard of the news, he tried to engage with the family. They did not want to engage with him. The reason why he did not announce the passing of the former president was because he wanted official confirmation from the family. But the family then went to go and make a public announcement about what had taken place, and that's when he saw that as official confirmation of what had taken place. So very true what you say, a political feud or a feud playing out even way beyond the grave. So today what we saw, I don't think that anticipated that it would go this way, because when we arrived there this morning, the flowers were being brought into for a church service that they expected was going to happen. Everything had been set up. There were buses that were brought in from Zambians here in South Africa. You know, senior members, I mean, the vice president of the Patriotic Front was also present. And
opposition members, other smaller parties.
Absolutely. So in speaking to them, you know, they spoke very much about wounds that were even being more deepened as a result of what had taken place. They asked questions about why have this court action on the day that we're supposed to, you know, send him to his final resting place. And most importantly, from what we pick up, as Sophie indicates, it's going to take someone to intervene in what is taking place at the moment, because from the sentiments shared by the family spokesperson was that he was treated less than. He was treated as if he did not make any contribution to Zambia. He got in an Uber when he came to South Africa. His protection detail was not there, and a host of other things. So it was very clear that they did not want, as per the wishes, what we heard from the family, as per the wishes of the former President Edgar Lungu, they did not want President Hichilema anywhere near his body, and his family was prepared to keep it that way.
And Canny, what is the court saying about who can, you know, visit the morgue to check what is happening and to be near his body right now?
Well, the court has made a very limited order regarding who can go and visit the remains of the former president in the interim as we await the final determination of this issue. Remember, I did state earlier that the actual arguments for the interim interdict that would have been arguing for those requirements, that is establishing the prima facie right, showing that the balance favors the applicant, the balance of probabilities rather, and then also showing that there's no alternative remedy other than to approach the court. I heard my colleague earlier stating that the family was questioning why approach the courts at the final hour, if we could describe it that way. I think Ms. Sophie can elaborate further on the engagements with the family, but we do know that the Zambian government first looked to the South African government for intervention. And it is against that backdrop that the South African government said that while their position is that they would like to see a figure like this be honored in a state funeral that is befitting for a former head of state, they are legally obligated to respect the wishes of the immediate family of the former president. It is against that backdrop that the South African government could not intervene on behalf of the Zambian government. Now, in the absence of fruitful interactions with the family, the only other option left would be to approach the court for an interim interdict pending the final determination of this issue, this final resolve, because yes, this is the loved one of the Lungu family, but this is also a former head of state of the Zambian nation and the Republic of Zambia. So of course that public interest needs to be safeguarded by the Attorney General, and he was acting within his rights according to the Constitution of the Republic of Zambia.
And I suppose, Sophie, it speaks about us not seeing the South African government as a respondent, even in court, because, as they say, they've chosen not to get involved in this particular matter.
Well, I think it was good that the government of Zambia didn't involve the South African government, because it was going to cause a diplomatic row. Yes, behind the scenes, it's not going well in terms of the views of both governments. Now, them excluding Pretoria, it was a good move. That also creates space for more engagement, but also now South Africa is seen as a neutral party in this matter, and therefore the South African government can still assist to ensure that both parties, they do find one another. That was a good move. And also, South Africa was clear by sending an envoy, the Minister of International Relations, Ronald Lamola. It did show respect to President Hakainde Hichilema. They didn't do it with emails or telephones. They sent an envoy to go and clarify South Africa's position. So I was not surprised that the South African government was not drawn into this matter, because you'd recall last week I was at Lanseria Airport, because South African government has been working hard to ensure that they treat both sides with respect, the government and the family. And the South African military personnel was there with the hope of sending off the remains of former President Edgar Lungu in a respectful manner. Even Derko was there, including representatives from the presidency, and therefore it didn't happen. So South Africa has been trying to play a reconciliatory role and a very neutral role, but also arguing the prescriptions in terms of the South African constitution and the laws of the country, in terms of when you have someone dying in South Africa, whether it's a South African or a foreigner, you hand over the remains to the relevant people, members of the family. That's why when there's argument, South Africa will go as far as doing DNA tests so that you give the remains to the right people. And in this case, the right people, it's not the Zambian government, but it's the family according to the South African law.
Quite interesting. And just before I let you go in about 20 seconds each, Chriselda, let's speak about for the former First Lady now, and one, you know, when looking at her earlier, you could see a lot of emotions were playing out in her eyes. Let's speak about that moment and what you know has been said, her sentiments about all of this.
Well, she didn't speak to the media. The media did try when the family arrived from Pretoria after the ruling. Essentially, they just walked into the church service. And where you really saw her broke down was when she was approached by the Vice President of the Patriotic Front. And they had a brief conversation. Both of them had a very emotional, very brief conversation. But you could sense that the family itself was quite distraught by the decision that was taken. They'd hoped that the funeral service and the private burial would go ahead.
I think what was even worse for her would be the fact that you know that she's facing court challenges in her own country, accused of certain charges, and she was supposed to have gone to Zambia on Tuesday to appear in court. So you can imagine it's those court appearances, and on the other hand you have this protracted issue that you would want to resolve. So I guess she is a human being, and it's getting to her. I mean, she is a human being, and that is why I'm saying now you need voice of reasons in the region. We don't have a problem of senior diplomats in this region and senior elders in this region to assist Zambians to find one another.
And we'll continue to watch this emotive story. Thank you so much for your coverage. You really did sterling work today. That's my colleagues there, SABC News International editors of Mokoena, as well as senior reporters Chriselda and Canny Mapanga.